Sue Blackmore.
Thank you very much. So here I am at Science and Non-Duality again. Last year I wrote to Maurizio. I'm not a bit slurpy like this normally, but I wrote to Maurizio. He does funny things to us, doesn't he? That I'd really found something I'd been looking for in... It's worse than a phone. I wrote to Maurizio that I'd really found something in just there being a conference called Science and Non-Duality. Because I've been in so many contexts in which things are black and white, science against spirituality. I spent 20 years as a parapsychologist not finding any paranormal phenomena, and therefore ending up thinking there aren't any, but being constantly tugged between the skeptics and the believers. And then all my work on near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences, when everybody wants either they're really true and they mean there's life after death and another realm and blah, 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 or they're just a hallucination, they're not interesting. When the truth is these are they are hallucinations, but they're fascinating, life-changing, important experiences we need to understand. And never kind of always this black and white tug. Suddenly, we're here at Non-Duality. Yes! And I came back here and I had these lovely words and everything. So it's very nice to be here. And last night, Rupert talked about two ways of investigating. One, by going the outer way through science and looking at things from the outside and understanding them, and the other going from the inside and looking there and opining that they come to the same kind of place. And that's really what I want to talk about today, because that's sort of what's happened to me over a long time doing my scientific investigations and my research, trying to understand how the brain works, the problems of consciousness and how it relates to brain activity and so on. And meanwhile, 30 years of Zen training, and I'm thinking of these things as completely separate for much of my life. And then kind of going, well, actually, I think maybe they're not completely separate, in fact, not separate at all. They're just different ways of going about wanting to know, what is this? How can I see? I mean, what is seeing at all? Would you please just shut your eyes for a moment? Okay, now open them. It's a miracle. The world just appears. Duh. This is one of the problems we have. It seems so easy. There's a story told about Marvin Minsky, great artificial intelligence builder of robots and so on, who apparently once 40 years ago set a graduate student the summer project to make an artificial vision system. Well, 40 years later, we still don't have proper artificial vision systems. It is so hard. And they said about it all the wrong ways, and we're beginning to unravel the mysteries of what the brain is doing. And that's what I really want to talk about now. So what is seeing? Sort of feels like this, doesn't it? I open my eyes, and I'm kind of inside, and I'm looking out, and it's like, well, the world comes into me. Surely I must be kind of making a picture of the world inside my head somewhere, and that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a picture of the world that my brain makes. I mean, we know the brain's doing it, because you damage a bit of the brain, or you damage the retina, or chop the optic nerve, or whatever, and you can't see anymore. But what's it doing? Seems to be it's got to be something like this. That's our intuition. Well, for a long time, this is the kind of theories people worked on. If we go back a few hundred years, we can go back thousands, and people thought something similar, but we can go back a few hundred years to Descartes. And he knew that the body was a kind of a machine, and he knew that the eyes worked by, like a camera, focusing an image on on the retina, which works a bit like the back of a digital camera, and then an upside-down image and so on. And then it goes off up the optic nerve to the brain. And then, dun, 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 what on earth happens? Magic. I see it. Yeah, what does that mean? Well, His answer was a dualist answer, as I'm sure you know, Cartesian dualism after Descartes. He thought there genuinely was mind stuff and body stuff, physical and mental, extended stuff and thinking stuff. Well, how did one get to the other? Because if you've got two things, they don't make sense unless they interact. It was in the pineal gland, in the middle of the brain. Well, that doesn't help. The pineal gland is a physical organ in the middle of the brain. It's just magic to say that connected with the soul, which is what he thought. Well, this gives rise to the problem of dualism. In the 19th century, skipping on a bit, people like William James and Helmholtz and the early physiologists and psychologists struggling with this called it the fathomless abyss or the great chasm. And more recently, it's been called the explanatory gap or the hard problem of consciousness. But it's always the same problem. There seem to be two kinds of things in the world, subjective experience or our inner world and so on, and the objective. And we don't seem to find the non-duality that surely must be there. Dualism doesn't work. Separate souls, minds floating about, it neither makes sense nor fits with the evidence. It doesn't work. That's why we're here, because we're trying to find some kind of non-duality or understand the world or see the world in a non-dual way. It's bloody hard. So, how does the brain do it? What's it doing? What is seeing? I want to just give a very brief overview of it, and I'll show a few pictures of brains, because it matters, what the bits are called or anything like that. But I want to give some kind of feeling for the kind of processing that's going on in the brain. So we start with a light coming in through the eyes, and on the back of the retina, there are 4 layers of cells which do some preliminary processing. Interestingly, most of that processing is throwing away. Imagine how much information there is. Your eyes make saccades, that's large eye movements, 5 or 6 times a second. Each one, just imagine the amount of information that if you had to put it in your little computer. So a lot of what the brain's doing is throwing stuff away. So it does a bit of that first, then it sends it up the optic nerve into the thalamus. And here, an interesting thing begins. This is before we even get to the cortex. 2 pathways. One goes through the superior colliculus and one goes through the lateral geniculate nucleus. The first one, how many of you looked over there when I went like that? Hands up? It was quite quiet, wasn't it? But you did. If you did that, your eyes will have snapped really quickly. They just go. Now, that's happening in the superior colliculus route. A very, very fast route that it will take your eye movements to something happening. You're very sensitive to movement in the periphery out there, more so than in the center. And on the periphery here, if I held up something, am I allowed to take a flower out? Well, maybe not. I'll lift the whole thing up. Right, look at me, look at my nose. Now, if I hold this out here, and you're really looking at my nose, you probably, depending where you're sitting, you probably can't see the color. Or the shape, or really identified it all well, because only the fovea has really a lot of neurons and very fine definition and color. If I wiggle it, you see it straight away. You've got plenty of motion detectors out there. So already there's this strange disconnect between different bits on the retina doing different things. So there's a whole lot of information goes off and controls your eye movements. Then most of it goes into the thalamus and the LGN, and goes on up into primary visual cortex, and there you've got V1, V2, V4, MT, all these different things, and they're doing different jobs. Why is this interesting? Because we're thinking in our intuition that there's a kind of picture in the brain somewhere, that what the visual system must be doing is building up the picture that we see. But hang on a minute, all this stuff's going off in different directions. For example, color information is processed largely in V4, and it doesn't come together again, as far as we can see, to make the picture. There are said to be something like 40 parallel pathways in the visual system, all going on at once, over time, not coming together to make a picture. Now, oh, I forgot to bring my hedgehog. Oh no. All the way from England, I brought a beautiful hedgehog. And this thing will have to do instead of my hedgehog. You can pretend it's a hedgehog if you like. Nobody caught it, but all the people around went, and like that, right? Now, what's going on there? I have in the past thrown something quite heavy into the audience, and one time I hit somebody in the eye. I thought, no, you don't do that again. That's why I brought this pretty little furry hedgehog that would fly, but I failed. The point is, there are two major streams. Once you've gone to V1 and a lot of processing's gone on, there are two major streams called the dorsal stream and the ventral stream. And the dorsal stream takes information very quickly up to the motor cortex. I don't have a pointer, but I can point on my head instead. Motor cortex is a kind of strip here, which controls and plans all the movements of your hands and makes you able to go like that and grab something if it comes towards you, or go like that if you don't want it to hit you. And that happens very fast. Now, if I threw something at you and you caught it, you would probably say something like this. After the fact, you'd say something like this. I saw the hedgehog coming towards me, and so I reached out and caught it. But we know that's not true. That's an illusion. Why do we know it's not true? Because this happens much, much too fast. And it's only on this separate pathway, the ventral stream going down to the temporal lobe, it's only there that object recognition takes place. And that's much more complicated, and it takes a lot longer. So long after, in brain terms, long after your arms have gone, or comes all that recognition stuff, oh, it's a little furry hedgehog, and I caught it. It's later, but you don't have to worry about that. You just think, I caught it. I caught it. But where is this I? Not only are there 40 parallel pathways, probably more, I don't know that you can really count them, but lots in the visual system, but also in the auditory system, in the tactile system, in the motor system. The brain is a massively parallel system, all sorts of things going on at once. It doesn't all come together somewhere where I could be. If I'm anything in brain terms, I'm some sort of a fleeting construction that comes and goes, that is constructed. For example, we know there's a body image constructed. This is how we now understand why out-of-body experiences happen. There's a kind of junction, a lot of things coming together that build a body image, that know that my legs are here and my head's here, and put together with touching and so on. There's all that. There's all sorts of ideas about self and so on. Those are things happening, but there's not somewhere where the conscious self could be in a system that works like this. And interestingly, I mean, I could take this to any level, not any level, but I could take it way finer and get more and more words and more names and things. It doesn't help the basic problem of what's happening? Where am I in this? In fact, the problem of self and consciousness just gets worse the more we understand. Interesting, isn't it? So this is why I say very often, consciousness is an illusion, self's an illusion, free will is an illusion, vision as we normally think of conscious vision is an illusion. There's one particular theory called grand illusion theory in vision. And that's what I'm talking about today. But I want to be clear what I mean by illusion. I hope you enjoy this one. Anybody enjoying it? Or anybody not enjoying it? I don't actually enjoy it very much. It's horrible, isn't it? It's interesting, though, that it depends what you find happening depends where you're looking. It's an interaction between you and it, which I could set off in a whole lot of sensory motor theories where vision is actually a kind of action, not a kind of receiving, but that's another whole story. So why I'm saying this is I want it to be clear when I say something's an illusion, I'm not saying there's nothing there. Obviously, there is seeing. Obviously, there's some problem of consciousness or we wouldn't be worrying about it. There seems to be free will, so there's something happening. What I mean by an illusion, I look it up in the dictionary, and there's a very simple definition, very similar in most dictionaries. A false impression or notion or something that deceives or misleads intellectually. Putting it more simply, an illusion is something that's not what it seems to be. Now, an illusion is not what it seems to be. In this talk today, I'm not talking about the obvious kind of illusion of seeing the world. In fact, what Zaya and Maurizio were talking about, and also Rupert, the easy thing to understand is like those horrible things there, or actually even this illusory cube. We know that there's something in the world, some black and white shapes, and yet there seems to be a cube in 3 dimensions. That's easy. That's a kind of appearance reality illusion. That's quite easy to understand. It doesn't upset us too much. We're quite happy to think, well, our brain plays a bit of tricks on us. What? Brain and us? Never mind. We're happy with that. I'm talking about a much more difficult illusion, much more profound problem with the nature of seeing, which is this. We feel, well, let's see what it is. Let's see what I'm trying to say is illusory, because it's not just, oh, we're not seeing the world is illusion. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying something rather different. So if an illusion is something that's not what it seems to be, how does it seem to be seeing? In the absence of my hedgehog, I'm rather enjoying this beautiful bunch of flowers. I don't know whether they're real or plastic. I think they might be real. Sit there for a moment looking at this bunch of flowers. How does it seem? Being you looking at a bunch of flowers. Some of you are without thoughts and non-dual. It'll seem different to you than it does to ordinary mortals like me. Here's the ordinary mortal view. Does it seem like a stream of experiences? You're seeing me walking up and down. You're seeing the vase of flowers from where you are. The vase is over here, and so am I. You're over there. And it's an endless, ongoing stream. Does it seem like that? Does it seem a bit like this? Hands up if it seems a bit like this. A few hands. Oh, actually quite a lot of you. Go on, be brave. Does it feel like that? Yes, I like that. I like the man at the back like this. Yes, I could do that too. Yes, a lot of the time it seems like this. I mean, sorry. It seems like this. I mean, I know that you know that there isn't a sofa inside your head with a little man sitting on it. But the feeling of ordinary seeing is, I'm inside my head, there's a picture of what's going on, I'm in charge of what's happening, I choose what to look at, it's coming in through my eyes, and so on. And I want to worry about this. This is what the philosopher Dan Dennett calls the Cartesian theatre, again after Descartes. The reason he calls it that is because he says nearly all, very, very nearly all scientists and philosophers and thinkers reject Cartesian dualism, the complete separation of mind, body, and mind and body. But, he says, and I think he's absolutely right, when you discard Cartesian dualism, you really must discard the show that would have gone on in the Cartesian theatre and the audience as well, for neither the show nor the audience can be found inside the brain, and the brain is the only real place there is to look for them. Now, he is a materialist. He calls himself a radical behaviorist. I follow him in a lot of things, not exactly in that. But he is, from that perspective, saying, looking materially at the brain, we can't find either the audience or the show. Well, we're used enough, I think, to thinking, well, there can't really be somebody in there, even though I feel there is. But no show as well, that is quite disturbing. In fact, it's so disturbing, people really, really, really don't like Dennett. And they are very surprised, and so is he, if you say, but what your conclusions you're coming to are pretty similar to the ones that kind of non-dual people coming to. But we'll come to that in a minute. They're so upset that in a peer-reviewed journal, it has been said that Dan Dennett is the devil. He doesn't look really like a devil, does he? He's lovely, cuddly, Father Christmassy type. But why do people think he's like the devil? Because he says, you have to give up your intuitions. And that is what we don't want to do. There's powerful intuition that I'm in here and these vase is over there. I'm in here, I'm looking at you over there. Hello. That's the intuition. Well, I'm going to make you give it up, so there. You're going to have a horrible, horrible time. He says it's a struggle to get people to even think about abandoning their intuitions, and I think he's right about that. The whole of consciousness, science of consciousness studies is mired in this problem. But he says that theories that are not counterintuitive are just wrong. And I'm afraid that, yeah, let's try to open our minds to kind of counterintuitive things. Well, you've heard this before, haven't you? And you may be better than many scientists struggling with this stuff at being open-minded about it, welcoming paradox. I mean, good scientists learn to welcome paradox, to use paradox as a spur, and that's what some of the best vision scientists are doing. It's all very difficult. Vision is not what we thought it was 20, 30 years ago, even 10 years ago. But we don't really understand what it's happening. And facing this paradox and having to cope with giving up your intuitions is part of being a good scientist, just as it is in our meditation training or spiritual training. And we have this urge, this admonition to give up our intuitions all over the place. So let's have a go at a simple intuition. Could you just please look around the room? Do you have the feeling that you can kind of see the room? There you are, you're seeing the room. And it could lead to the sort of feeling there must be a picture in your brain somewhere that is what you're seeing. That's the normal intuition. And the idea, because we know that every time you make a saccade, you're only able to see just this little bit in the middle that your fovea is pointing at. You can't see all the room at once. If you want to see all the room, you've got to move your eyes around. So the natural theory that comes out of that, and was prevalent in psychology until recently, was really that, you come into a new space, like this room, for example, and you look around at about this rate, looking, take in some more, take in some more, take in some more, take in some more, and you've got the whole picture. Sorry, it's meant to have the whole picture there and not be blank, but you get the idea. That's kind of what our intuitions suggest, given what we know about moving our eyes around. It's amazing the world stays stable as our eyes move around. Even that's weird enough. But we kind of think we must be taking all the information in. So I want to just show you something. And I'm going to show you this very briefly. So I want you to concentrate very hard, please. And after you've finished seeing this, I want you to tell me what you saw. So here we go. Right, what did you see? The devil, ha-ha, you did see the devil. Yes, what else did you see? Something in the left? We'll see in a minute. What was that picture? Anyone tell me? A number of dennets, how many? Some say 21, any other numbers? 18? More? What else? Were they all exactly the same? No, why not? One had horns. Okay, so we've got 18 or 21 identical pictures of Dan Dennett, and one's got horns. Everyone happy with that? Anything else you want to say?
Some more pictures with something on it, but I hadn't had the time.
You didn't have the time, okay. Anyone want to say anything else about it? Nobody see the scar? Had horns and a scar. Yeah, okay, so 18 or 21 identical pictures of Dan Dennett, one's got horns and a scar. Yeah, happy with that? That's what you think you saw. Okay, here's what you saw. Now, you've got plenty of time now. So, it's actually 18. You saw 18 identical portraits of Dan Dennett, one with horns and a scar. So why am I making a fuss about it? Because that picture was up for exactly 2 seconds. You will probably have made somewhere between 10 and 12 saccades in that time. Depending where you're sitting, but certainly for you in the front, you will only be able to see what it's like and the glasses and everything else if you're looking straight at it. There are 18 pictures. You can't have looked at them all. Add to that the fact that you all... Did anybody not see the horns or the scar? Only 3 people. Everybody else did, that you saw these. Now, in order to see those, you probably used up 4, 5, 6, or, several saccades going da-da-da-da to make sure that that was really horns and a scar. You've got precious few left over for looking at the rest. So how come you saw all those identical pictures of Dan Dennett? You weren't looking at them. You couldn't have looked at them, but you saw them. I'll tell you how, and we know exactly how. Because you've got dedicated pop-out mechanisms that will run along something and go same, you know, a line. There's a line there. Something sticks out from the line. Take a saccade over there. That's the automatic quick superior click things going over there. You've also got pattern detectors, which are going pattern, 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 pattern. Line detectors that are going straight line, straight line. Texture detectors that are saying same texture, same texture. All those things are doing their job, and the conclusion somewhere, somehow, is what it is. But you didn't even look at them all. Now, if you really did kind of suck in a whole picture of the world here, then you ought to notice if something changes, shouldn't you? So let's suppose that my white shirt here were to suddenly go bright pink. Would you notice? Okay, you're pretty confident about that. What about if you just flicked your eyes like that, and while they were flicking, it turned pink and you looked back and it was pink? Would you notice? Some yeses and some nos. What about if you blinked and during the blink it went green? Would you notice? People are wondering here, because you sort of think you ought to, don't you? I mean, in the real world, you think if you walked around, you'd kind of notice something like that, wouldn't you? This, I think, isn't going to work on here. I think I won't bother with that. I'm going to move this picture. This is one of the first experiments I ever did on something called change blindness. In fact, it was the first experiment on change blindness. And I use a different method from what's conventionally used. But I like this method because it's mimicking eye movements. So I'm just moving this picture as though you were making an eye movement. And something's going to change when I move it. Now, I don't want you to tell anybody when you see something moving, okay? I'm just going to move the picture as though your eyes were moving. And something in the picture is changing. Hands up if you can't see it. Most of you still. I'll carry on a bit longer then. Hands up if you still can't see it. It's fairly obvious. It's quite a big thing. Ah, good, we've got one, oh yeah. Isn't it wonderful when you see it, you think, how could I have not seen it? Is that what you're thinking? Yeah, it's bloody obvious, isn't it? Excuse my English swearing. Yes. Any more ahas? Yeah, okay, we're getting there now. Yeah, another one. How many people still can't see it? Still quite a few. Okay, I'm going to stop doing this now, and what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to keep the picture still and make the change. So watch carefully. It's really obvious. It's quite a big object. It's right in the middle of the picture. It's disappearing and appearing, and you didn't even notice it. But notice something else about this. Look at me and the other woman, Uta. You can see us moving. Isn't that extraordinary? I mean, your movement detectors are so acute that they can detect that teensy bit of movement if you're looking straight at it at the time. If you're not, or if you're moving your eyes or blinking, you don't. Why is our visual system that way? Because in the real world, shirts don't suddenly go pink. If they did, if, you know, tigers or whatever was important when our visual system was evolving, suddenly changed into something else, we'd have a visual system that could do that. But we don't need to, because by and large, we can leave the information out in the world where it is. We don't need to suck it into our heads at all. A lot of theories coming out of this change blindness work are along the lines of, we're not having all this stuff in our head at all. It's actually always out there in the world. But because we can look again, if we want to know, it's always there. Every time I look there, you're there. I haven't kept you in my head at all. But I think I have, because every time I look, you and your bright blue shirt are there. Or the same with this. All these things seem to be stable because every time I look again or stamp on it, it's there. But in between, it's all gone and thrown away. It's an illusion that we've actually got this picture in the head. But it's so powerful that we have been deluded through psychology and physiology and so on into going on believing this. And now the neuroscience is kind of unraveling it for us and showing us how deluded we have been. I just want to play you a little video. here we go. Just for fun, really, for you to enjoy this, it's important in noticing changes and so on to pay attention. So a magic trick is quite a good example of this. So let's see if this can give you a bit of fun with your own ability at attention. I think I've just killed it.
Hi, I'm Richard, this is Sarah, and we're going to perform the amazing colour-changing card trick with this blue-backed deck of cards. Now the idea is very simple. I'm just going to spread the cards in front of Sarah and ask her to push any card towards the camera.
Right, okay, let's see. I'm going to go for this card here.
Okay. Now Sarah could have selected any card at all from the deck, but she selected the card which is now face down on the table. And what I'm going to ask her to do is show us which card she selected.
Right, so the card that I chose was in fact the 3 of diamonds.
The 3 of diamonds, okay, an excellent choice. That card goes back into the deck. Now I'm just going to spread the cards face up on the table, do a little click of the fingers, and you'll see that Sarah's card here has now got a blue back. Not particularly surprising. What's slightly more surprising is all of the other cards have got red backs. And that is the amazing colour-changing card trick.
Right, that was quite a fun little trick, wasn't it? Well, now I'm going to show you the same thing happening at the same time, but filmed with a wide-angle lens. This is all Richard Wiseman's, by the way, not mine. So, watch carefully.
Hi, I'm Richard, this is Sarah, and we're going to perform the amazing colour-changing card trick with this blue-backed deck of cards. Now the idea is very simple. I'm just going to spread the cards in front of Sarah and ask her to push any card towards the camera.
Right, okay, let's see. I'm going to go for this card here.
Okay. Now Sarah could have selected any card at all from the deck, but she selected the card which is now face down on the table. And what I'm going to ask her to do is show us which card she selected.
Right, so the card that I chose was in fact the 3 of diamonds.
The 3 of diamonds, okay, an excellent choice. That card goes back into the deck. Now I'm just going to spread the cards face up on the table, do a little click of the fingers, and you'll see that Sarah's card here has now got a blue back. Not particularly surprising. What's slightly more surprising is all of the other cards have got red backs. And that is the amazing colour-changing card trick.
Well, clap Richard Wiseman. Isn't that wonderful? How many people saw any of those changes? One person. It took you a while to laugh. I mean, I was just laughing the first time I saw it. I'm like, God, how could I possibly not see that? And we don't. I mean, it's very, very effective. You may have seen the gorilla lurking in the background. Have any of you seen the Invisible Gorilla film? Yeah, yeah. So it's just a little joke of his to put the gorilla suit in there. So it upsets us in a way because we think, surely I can pay attention, but actually attention is very interesting. It feels like there's a me in here who is doing the paying of attention. What it looks like from what's going on in the brain is shifting amounts of processing happening in different places. And there's a finite amount of processing that can go on. It can't take in everything at once. You know, the whole system would be overwhelmed. It's shifting not because there's somebody in there doing it, but it's multiple mechanisms making attention play to different places. So you shouldn't be embarrassed, because after all, I'd kind of suggested that you ought to be watching the cards, and you did. But we laugh because we're embarrassed, but I think actually under that laughing is another reason, because it's digging at this assumption about I'm in control here, I'm looking at what I want to look at, I'm taking in a whole picture of the world, and that's what it is to see. And that isn't what it is to see. One of my great heroes, and we heard about him this morning in the psychedelic session, great hero for so many different reasons. William James, his 1890 book, The Principles of Psychology, is my favorite book. I've got a first edition with scribbles all over it. I love the book. It's 1,100 pages in 2 volumes, and several hundred pages devoted to self, and a whole lot devoted to perception as well. And it's still worth reading today. And he really, really goes into looking to try and understand how vision works and what it means to see, as well as who is seeing. And he says, introspective analysis like this, of this kind. And he's looking into things like, for example, he says, how come I could go into a room and I don't notice the vase of flowers, and then suddenly I notice it. Well, what was there before? Was there a vase-shaped hole? No. But I want to be able to see what was there before I saw it. But I can't do that. What if I'm looking at this and experiencing this and not looking at this? What is it like to not look at something? What was it like when I'm not looking at you and then I look again? And he says introspective analysis in ways like this is like seizing a spinning top to catch its motion, or trying to turn up the gas quickly enough to see how the darkness looks. I love that thought, because every time I'm looking at something, every time I'm thinking about myself, I seem to be here. But what about when I'm not thinking about myself? Who's there then? I can't find out, because every time I look, I'm here. This is one of the things I know that many of you have played with and had trouble with. Turning up the gas quickly enough to see how the darkness looks. I'd love him to be alive now. I could introduce him to electricity. We can turn it up even quicker. Bang! And we can't see how the darkness looks. The modern equivalent is looking in the fridge to see whether the light's always on. I'm looking into my mind to see whether the light's always on. I often feel as if I'm walking around in the world constantly trying to open the door. Now, of course, with a fridge, it's quite easy. You can drill a hole in the side and look through, and ha-ha, caught you out, it's dark. Or you can open the door and understand the mechanism of the little switch that turns it on and off. So you get the answer. Maybe with the brain, with fMRI scans and such like, we can also find a similar answer, or maybe not. But can we? Is there some sense in which we can look into the darkness, somehow see the darkness without it being conflicted by what seems to be the light of myself and my attention? This whole idea that attention is a kind of spotlight that we shine around on the world has got to be wrong. But how do we get out of that so that we can really see? Does meditation help? And this is where I come to the other way of looking into these things. I chose today to talk about just some simple ideas that come out of the psychology of vision. But alongside my explorations of that, I've been practicing Zen for 30 years, meditating every day for a long time. And some of you probably know my book, which was originally called 10 Zen Questions. And the publishers changed the name to Zen and the Art of Consciousness. They thought it was more cool when they did the paperback, which is really annoying because occasionally people buy both and they go, no, it's the same book. So don't buy both. And this was just my attempt to, writing this book gave me an excuse to do some more exploration of some of these questions. And as far as looking into the darkness is concerned, I'm fascinated by the question, well, now I'm looking at this man's blue shirt, sorry to be obsessed with that, it's a lovely color. But was I conscious of it before? What about that rustling noise of the trees? Now I can hear it. I sort of feel as though somebody was listening to it for quite a long time. Well, who? What? That seems to be kind of looking into the darkness. That was my second question. A lot of these questions really come back all the time to the nature of self and perception. Who is asking the question? It might well be who is looking. And of course, you all know, the more you look, the more you don't find a persistent self who is doing the looking. So one way or another, as Rupert said, whether we go at it from the outside or for the inside, somehow we have to out of the Cartesian theatre and disappear in a puff of smoke. Bye.